Greetings and welcome to the Wild Swans at Coole. Today's video is on major novelists of 20th century. I have in this video mainly focused on two writers, Joseph Conrad and Henry James, but you can also uh, write about the other writers such as and mostly very important writers such as Virginia Woolf, James Joyce, E.M. Foster, and you will get the reference along with Joseph Conrad and Henry James, and you will get the reference from Albert History of English Literature book. So without any delay, let's begin. The 20th century broke with the mission of the Victorian novel, which is storytelling and entertainment. It rather focuses on character to unravel the intricate web of thoughts and feelings that activate the individual. So the 20th century literary works mostly focuses on characters, internal thoughts and feelings, and it is a very complicated web of thoughts. And the most for my understanding, the most and best example of this line or of this character to unravel the intricate web of thoughts and feelings is Virginia Woolf's Mrs. Dalloway. If you have read the novel, you will understand how this novel basically is an example of 20th century literary works characteristics. There are no serialized or no organized version like beginning or end. It starts suddenly with one individual, and then how her thoughts jumbled up, like from eating to aeroplane, then again coming back to reality with the sound of clock, and that is how this novel works. It is actually a century of psychological tension. The older structure of a protagonist and antagonist gave away. Characters struggle with themselves or with a situation, but not with a figure of evil incarnate. So the evil is inside. When the evil is not outside, it is inside. So there is no beginning or end, so there is no such as division as good, evil character, bad character, good character. So the protagonist thoughts are their own evil. Science and technology make life easy but unable to give mental peace. Joseph Conrad, Henry James, H.G. Wells, James Joyce, Foster, Virginia Woolf are the main novelists of the 20th century. By discussing Joseph Conrad and Henry James, we are going to have an overall idea about 20th century literary works. Now let's begin. So before begin with Joseph Conrad, there are some important aspects that you have to remember about Joseph Conrad, that he is a Polishman, and his first publication of novel is Almayer's Folly, and he likes to voyages, and he has voyaged in many places such as Venezuela, Myanmar, India, Africa. So his writings are basically autobiographical references, and mostly the story, the setting of the stories are based on sea lives or sea related. And some of his famous works are Almayer's Folly, Lord Jim, Heart of Darkness, and Suspense. So let's begin with Joseph Conrad was a policeman who came in England in 1891, and after the publication of his first novel Almayer's Folly, he took citizenship of Britain and devoted himself to his writings. He made several more voyages to Venezuela, Myanmar, India, Africa. So his writings are based on sea lives. Under this setting, stories are written. He is basically a late Victorian and emerging to modern writer. He is a novelist, short story writer, a modernist, and his writings came to limelight after his death. He expects to find adventure in an unusual or exotic setting, and he is very much influenced by the sea lives. He has experience of the sea, and here it will be experienced, okay, and in particular Malayalam waters, and most of his best works are based on these settings. His stories dive deeper into psychology. He does not have any evil character, as it is the the characteristic of 20th century, that the evil is inside, but the different background and darker nature often represents the character's evil inner psyche. So symbolism is also a very important aspect of modernist writing, where the dark background or nature is used as a symbol to represent the character's evil inner psyche. So sometimes objects, as you know, in theater you will say many objects represents represents a character's inner psyche, and for example Henry Ibsen's A Doll's House, there is a piano, and that piano, and there is also a Christmas tree. These object also represent the character Nora's internal feelings, or the Nora's position in the household. So when one read his novels, one easily understand there is always presented a man versus nature settings. There is also presented harsh, remote, exotic places that shows of evil is not outside, then evil is inside. His quote shows the 20th century psychological tension. The belief in a supernatural source of evil is not necessary. Men alone are quite capable of every wickedness. His stories came out from life and experiences and autobiographical references. His stories are not imaginary. He finds similarity between different regions and people and different cultures are represented in his writings. His stories are experience gathering from sea life. So you can see that his stories are basically autobiographical, has autobiographical references and his life experiences. His style of narratives are very similar to Bronte sisters. He was known for best storyteller of his time. He is an excellent storyteller who gives deep thought to his technique of presentation. His prime interest is in character, in the tracing of the life of a man in such a way as to illuminate the inmost recesses of his soul. His stories are like third-person narrative, where it feels like we are watching the whole scenario through camera lens and we are like silent spectator. He has godlike voice of storytelling, who has a knowledge of everything. His characters are not stereotypical like his contemporaries, and best example is Heart of Darkness. His famous novels are Almayer's Folly, The Nigger of Narcissus, An Outcast of the Island, The Nigger of Narcissus, which is a moving story of life on board ship, remarkable for its powerful atmosphere, its sea description, character study. Lord Jim is the first important experimental novel of the era, and Jim as a curious questioner who discovers facts. And another thing about Lord Jim is that Conrad introduced the indirect or oblique method of narration in Lord Jim, where the incidents are indirectly presented by Marlowe in a backward-forward movement, building up a picture through a series of brief sense impressions which only reveal their full significance when they finally come together into a complex whole. Now, Heart of Darkness is a shorthand for European stereotypes of Africa. During this journey, he discovers a dark dilemma of moral ethics. Being overtaken by greed and imperialism, Marlowe discovers how easy it is to become inhuman without a structured society of civilization. Although it is a first-person narrative, the secret sharer often adds short story as novel, and as novella is also one of his great work. Lagoon is another important work, and you can see that the Lagoon is a whitesman view of seeing a black man. His Suspense, a historical novel, in this third or fourth stanza, I think 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the sixth stanza's last line. His Suspense, a historical novel is a historical novel. The name of the novel Suspense was given by the narrator because what will happen in the end only Conrad knows, because it was unfinished at his death. I am mostly summarizing this because this whole note is on about above 1000 words or approximately 1000 words. So if you want to get a short note, you can follow only my voice and collect it as a 500 notes. Okay, now let's move on to Henry James. So Henry James is basically contrast of Joseph Conrad's writing, not a contrast in the sense opposite, but you will see the difference. For example, Henry James writings are Henry James is the one who has give a serializer structure in this jumbled up writings of modernist, and he is more of a abstract or artistic kind of writing style. Let's begin. Knowing Henry James is really important to the reader of Woolf, Mansfield, Conrad, George Moore, because he was one of the first fellow modern novelists as an artistic form. He was an American British writer. He became a friend of the New England of writers like James Lowell, H.W. Longfellow. In 1915, he became a nationalized British subject. He, for the first time, formulated a theory of the novel and established the novel as an art form. To him, the novel was primarily an art form, as you can see, to be judged solely by artistic canons concerned not with moral purpose but with the objective and impartial presentation of the reality of life. He was little concerned about external events and almost entirely with the detailed elaborate study of the subtlest shades of human reaction to the situation which he conceived. So you can see again a different with Joseph Conrad writing. Joseph Conrad mainly focused on inner psyche, but Henry James also focuses on inner psyche, but not that of psychological level. He with detailed and elaborate study, he has given shades of human reaction to the situation which he conceived. Henry James is primarily interested in a character developing as part of a social group. So his writings are mostly important in character developing. He has no interest in the poor or in the unintelligent. His characters are usually intellectuals like himself, sensitive, refined, sophisticated, controlling impulse by reason, and endowed with a faculty for actual self-analysis. His famous novels are Roderick Hudson, The American, The Europeans, The Portrait of a Lady. These novels are dealing with mainly the contrast between the young American civilization and the older European culture. Joseph Conrad, Heart of Darkness, and these novels of Henry James, The Portrait of a Lady, you will understand the difference. Though they are these modern writers, you can put them in one boundary, that is they are modernist, but though they are in the frame of modernist, but they are not always a same type of writing, not always same structure. Heart of Darkness of Joseph Conrad is based on as you can say the African life, stereotypes of basically European stereotypes of Africa, and there is the darker setting, the darker background as a symbol. But Henry James mostly focused on character development. These novels are dealing with mainly the contrast between the young American civilization and older European culture. Then came the tragic muse, the spoils of Poynton, and the awkward age. These novels are dealing with the English life and English character. Among them, The Spoils of Poynton is a relatively short novel, shows most clearly the development of his methods. The third group includes his American studies and novels of maturity. The Wings of the Dove, The Ambassador, The Golden Bowl. These are again the contrast between European and American cultures. In this novel, he achieves a subtlety of a character study, a delicacy of perception, and an elaboration of artistic presentation which rank them high among modern novels. In Washington Square, The Bostonians, he wrote some excellent studies of American life. The Altar of the Dead, The Two Magi's, The Beast in the Jungle, The Birthplace are some of his short stories which are published in American novels. His autobiographical writings were A Small Boy and Others, Notes of a Son and Brother. His letters were also published in 1920. He is the father of the modern novel and paved the way for such technique as the stream of consciousness. He developed the technique of psychological analysis and dramatic presentation of the impression of his characters. He evolved the technique of presenting his story through the consciousness of a single character, and again his commonality with other modernist writers that they present the consciousness of one single character. So though modernists can confuse you that though they are talking about the universe, but mainly they are focusing on their own problem, on their own individual thoughts, on their own individual identity, and they are trying to generalize their own thoughts with others. And best example is Virginia Woolf, Mrs. Dalloway. The world of his novels is a narrow, limited world which interests only the highly sophisticated, and Mrs. Dalloway is also from middle class. And though Mrs. Dalloway, we will see most of the time talks about that the world war is happening, or we are all like that, but mainly he is talking about only a very class oriented all. This is not an universal we, but a very class oriented way, and even sometimes it is very gender oriented way. Mrs. Dalloway, when she is talking, she is only talking about herself, her class, and sometimes even as a female, not with the voice of a male. She is not generalizing, but it may feel like she is generalizing, but it is not. So the world of his novels here for Henry James is a narrow, limited world which interests only the highly sophisticated. He has made the novel imitate drama, but he has rescued the novel from the loose, shapeless, and has given it a formal structure. So basically, a very modernist, a similar kind of opposite kind of modernist approach, because modernists are basically a stream of consciousness kind of writing, but here though Henry James is also like that, but he has almost give a structure to it. The tendency of the modern novel towards greater and greater inwardness has really started from him. So the reason for this kind of self-conscious intricate web of thoughts was because of the First World War. Why the 20th suddenly? Why? What has happened that all of the people started writing only about the individual? Because it is not the 19th century end and 20th century begins and writings also change. Things are not like that. It takes time, but what makes it to go like that? What is the cause that 19th century writings deviates or is different from 20th century writing? And the main cause is the social cause, the political cause, which is the First World War, the world wars. What the world war has done to these people, to the people who were born in 19th century and going to enter in 20th century, what the world has done to them, what the world war has done to them. Because of the world war, they have lost their faith. They have some belief that God will save them, God will help them, but when they face the situation that world war is happening and everyone is dying and no prayer is getting fulfilled, so a kind of disbelief arises, and so people start to lose their hope, and because of this anxiousness, this anxiety, and which is being expressed through these writers in their writing. So that is it for today's video. If you have liked this video, please make sure to like, subscribe and share with your friends. And again, if you want a detailed discussion on this, or a more brief kind of introduction or more brief kind of summarization, you can follow Albert history of English literature book, and from there you can if for example if you took Virginia Woolf, you can put Virginia Woolf some of the famous novel text, and then give her writing style. For example, stream of consciousness, how she has focuses on her language, and how she has represented the psyche of the people, and then with that you can explain 2 or 3 novels, and then that is how you can also do for others writers also. In this way you can briefly summarize all of the writers in a 500 notes. So that's it. Thank you. Let's meet on the next video.